One of the other quotes that we've sort of gotten from the research is that you sort of feel that there is not actually a war on women, but there may be a war on what's inside of women. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the babies. I mean, we're killing babies all over the place. And, you know, we should be, I think people can probably understand. In my case, I spent my entire career trying to preserve life and give people quality of life, even operating on babies in the womb, operating all night long sometimes on premature babies. And I get to meet those people, you know, when they're adults and productive adults. There is no way you can convince me that they're not important, that they're just a mass of cells and that you can do anything to them.
I want to ask you this. Have you met with the women who have to make these horrendous decisions when they have to make them of whether or not they can bring a child into the world? I mean, we talk about bringing children into the world all the time, but periodically, some women feel, I just can't. And are you empathetic to them? Because we just had
empathetic.
Oh, good. Go ahead, sorry. Go ahead.
Very empathetic, and what I have said is that this is a job for us in the private sector. What we need to do is make sure that we provide adequate daycare centers for these mothers so that they can get their GED, their associate's degree, their bachelor's degree, their master's degree.
You're assuming that these are mothers who aren't educated. I mean, I'm talking about women who make that.
Of them.
I don't know that you can.
Let me tell you. Let me tell you a fact. Let me tell you a fact. The fact is, a lot of those young girls who are having babies out of wedlock, when they have that first baby,
about them,
they stop their education. And that child is 4 times as likely to grow up in poverty. We as a society have an obligation to do what's necessary to stop that cycle from occurring.
So how important is birth control then to the Republican Party? They should be out there really applauding Planned Parenthood for supplying birth control, mammograms, and everything else. Why are they against Planned Parenthood? Are you against birth control, too?
I don't speak for the Republican Party. I speak for me.
Okay, for yourself. Are you against birth control also?
No, I'm not.
Okay. All right. And so I guess you believe in daycare centers and maternity leave and food stamps and all the things that go along with raising a kid if you don't have the money.
Here's what I believe in, because I get sick and tired of people, particularly progressives, saying Carson grew up poor. He must have benefited from government programs, and now he wants to withdraw all the programs from poor people.
We do not assume
Wait a minute. I've heard that so many times. You've heard it too. It's a bunch of crap. And what I really actually want to do is provide people with a mechanism for coming out of a state of dependency and climbing the ladder and becoming part of the fabric of America.
This is a great thing.
We agree with that.
Yes, but I think my question. Actually, I'm going to let everybody else ask their questions. I don't
it takes me to Obamacare, because you said it's the worst thing that has happened in this nation since slavery. How is it slavery and over 9 million people have it?
Let me tell you why.
Why?
Because this is supposed to be a country that is of, for, and by the people. The government is supposed to be there to facilitate life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. With this particular act, the government comes along and says, don't care what you people think. This is what we're doing. We're cramming it down your throat, and if you don't like it, too bad.
Getting into the war.
That essentially shifts.
Because we did that. We've done that. That seems to be the way of the nation.
But it shifts the relationship between the people and the government. The people are supposed to be at the pinnacle. The government works for us. It's not the other way around. And we need to restore that.
Okay.
That's very important.
All right. Are we done?
Anybody else?
I just wanted to ask one last thing. I mean, you said that you don't necessarily relate to the Republicans, and you don't really say you're a Democrat either. So why do you feel this way?
I said I don't speak for the Republicans. I didn't say I didn't relate to them.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing.
Is there anything about the Republicans that you don't relate to?
Well, I am not a highly partisan person. The issues that affect us are imminent financial collapse if we don't change our ways.
Forgive me, Dr. Ben.
You know,
forgive me.
They're not Republican or Democrat issues.
Dr. Ben Carson, y'all. Members, wait. Members of the audience, you're all going home with Dr. Ben's book, A More Perfect Union. Thank you, Dr. Ben. I'm sorry.
You're a neurosurgeon, which, you know, I'm very impressed with that. You separated Siamese twins, right? Fabulous. But I know also you're a scientist, and yet I was reading that you don't believe in evolution. Okay, now wait, before you go any further, what I want to say to you is, don't take this wrong, Mrs. Carson, I'm not asking for a date. But how do you feel about taking a trip to the Museum of Natural History with me? We could do like a little walkthrough and have a discussion about it.
Believe me, I would be happy to do that. I can have a very in-depth discussion with you. I've had discussions with Nobel laureates on this, and they have to admit that, well, we don't know everything. You know, the fact of the matter...
What do you make of that fact that they just dug up some bones a million years ago?
Let me explain. First of all, evolution, microevolution versus macroevolution are two different things.
Oh, this is too in the weeds for us right now. We don't have the time for this conversation. Let's just go on the date.
We're talking about natural selection when we're talking about microevolution. And I believe, yes, organisms have an ability to adapt to their environment, and they have the ability to change.
Right.
Now, the evolutionists say that is proof positive of evolution. I say it's proof positive of an intelligent creator who gave his creatures the ability to adapt to their environment so that they don't have to start over every 50 years.
But that's your faith. You believe that because that's your faith, right?
And I have said...
Why not believe in both?
Do you believe in both? Can you believe in both?
And I have said, you know, people are allowed to believe in what they believe. Some people believe that something came from nothing, and then they believe that it exploded, and we had a perfectly organized org. I don't believe that. I don't have enough faith to believe that, but I don't denigrate people who believe that.
No.
So Dr. Ben Carson was a political outsider who shook up the election before dropping out. He recently and surprisingly surprised a lot of people by endorsing fellow outsider Donald Trump. Please welcome to Hot Topics, Dr. Ben Carson. Hey. So I'm sure you get this question a lot, but why did you endorse Donald Trump?
Well, you know, when I dropped out, my first choice went with me. But I said that...
It was you,
you know, I was going to remain neutral. But then I realized that, you know, the political establishment was aligning to protect their turf. And they don't like the ideal of people who are not beholden to them and who cannot be controlled coming into Washington, D.C. And that was one of the reasons they didn't like me very much, but I was easier to get rid of than Donald Trump.
Well, let me,
Sir, I hate to ask this question, but you have aligned yourself with a man who has bashed women, made countless racist remarks, and you're Ben Carson. Why would you align yourself with that?
Well, you know, you have to look at the good and the bad. There is no perfect person.
No, I know that.
But you know, you look at when Donald Trump first went down to Palm Beach area, and you know, a lot of the clubs down there would not accept Jews and blacks. He insisted on Jews and blacks and helped to break that open. So has he said some things that I wouldn't say or that you wouldn't say? Of course.
But he was also sued by the Justice Department in the 70s for not allowing black tenants into his properties, and he settled with the Justice Department even though he didn't admit any liability, any wrongdoing. It's very clear to those of us in the law that that means that there was something amiss, and it was a significant consent decree. So the notion that he is a fan of the African-American community, I think is...
Well, I will put it this way. I have met a lot of his employees, including African-Americans, and they have nothing but good things to say. Somebody who's hired as many people as he has hired, and you can find very few people who have anything negative to say.
Well, what about
and then you have to look at his family. I always say one of the ways that you measure a person is looking at their children. And how do their children act?
well, one's a big game hunter. I'm not thrilled with that.
Well, I mean, that's your privilege. But the fact of the matter is, you know, they have been raised very well. They're very respectful. And, you know, I look at a lot of kids who come from very wealthy families, and I am appalled at what I see. So there is no perfect person, but what I think is really the worst thing that threatens our nation right now is a political class, a ruling class, and they are so threatened by anybody who is not beholden to them, they will do virtually anything. And I think that's what's likely to destroy.
You can say that till the cows come home, sir. This guy is, I'm sorry, he's a racist, and he's not good for the country.
What's the alternative?
And I'm sorry, I don't understand. He's not said about...
What about
the white supremacists? He hasn't really said to them, hey, listen, that's not what America stands for. He said, you know, it's too much. You're Ben Carson. You're so much better than this.
Well, I am Ben Carson. And that's the very reason I'm doing this, is because I look at the big picture. Could I focus only on racial issues? Absolutely. Could I focus only on women's issues? Absolutely. I could look at any one little thing and pick anybody apart on it. But right now, the nature of our country is at stake. We are on the precipice.
Exactly what we're
and
worried about.
we are determining what kind of nation we're going to be. Are we going to be a nation that's upformed by the people or upformed by the government? This is a choice that we are making right now.
Okay, if you're going to overlook what he says about women, if you're going to overlook what he says about African Americans, what about what he said about you? He basically said that you had a pathological disease. Wait a minute, hold on. He even compared you to a child molester. Come on. Well, it could be personal, even.
If it were about me, I would be offended. But it's about America. We have to save this nation. That is what's important.
But he's a liar. Unless you say that you're a child molester, he's a liar. Do you want a liar for the presidency?
Tell me a politician who doesn't tell lies.
Abraham Lincoln. I don't know.
A current day
but
politician.
The lying that he does is continuous. It's on a regular basis.
Well, again,
Fact check goes berserk when he talks. He's got a long Pinocchio nose.
What I have to do is look at who is most likely to oppose the ruling class that is ruining our country.
Yeah, well,
who is likely?
In the ruling class.
Who is likely?
He is the ruling class.
He said that there would be room for you in his cabinet, in his administration. Did he make any promises to you, and is that behind your endorsement?
No, not at all. And in fact, you know, we agreed that we want to save this nation, particularly for the next generation, and talked about a variety of ways to do it. I'm continuing to work on mechanisms of presenting ladders of opportunity that will allow the downtrodden in our society to climb out of a state of dependency. Right now, the programs that have been put forth by both Democrats and Republicans for the last few decades are doing nothing but creating more dependency. We've gone from a can-do nation to a what can you do for me nation. It's not a good thing, and it's not helping America, and it's not helping the world.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Carson, and we know each other. I will say my husband went to Hopkins Medical School, and you and your wife and your family were always so gracious to us by inviting us into your home many times, fellowship, dinner. And so I know you are a man of family values. What do you make of the fact that Donald Trump just yesterday is attacking Ted Cruz's wife based on her looks?
Look, I do
and
not
has attacked other women.
I do not condone any of that. I don't condone it from anybody.
But you've endorsed him. Isn't that implicit in that endorsement?
No.
Aren't you endorsing his behavior?
Is not an endorsement of anything that anybody has said or done throughout their lives. The reason, again, that I'm endorsing him is because I recognize that we are heading down the exact same path that we have been on all along. These political types are very slick, and they get you to believe that everything's different now. Now we're going to be wonderful people, and we're not going to be doing this to the populace anymore. And that is absolutely not true.
All right, we're going to talk more with Dr. Ben Carson. We'll be right back. Back with Dr. Ben Carson.
And I wanted to follow up. You talked about the endorsement. Was anything promised to you, and what role do you see yourself in?
No, nothing was promised, nor would I accept anything. You know, the fact of the matter is, my interest all along, even in running for president, is to save this country for the next generation. And, you know,
what role would that be in the Trump administration?
Look very deeply at how that is going to be done. And I'm going to be working on health care, going to be working on education, which is an incredibly important part of a vibrant society. If you look at our military right now, you take people between the ages of 17 and 24 who are applying to the voluntary military, 71% are rejected. 71%.
Based on?
Physical, mental, or educational deficits, educational being by far the biggest. It is putting us at risk as a nation, not fixing our educational system. These are things that need to be worked on, things that I've discussed with Donald Trump. But also, I have to look at everybody who's available. And, you know, Case is just not going to make it.
I love Kasich.
Okay? He's not going to make it, okay?
He's still there. Some people aren't. They're still there.
Anyway.
Right. Cruz is not going to be able to draw people from the middle or the other side of the aisle.
True.
And you look at the number of people from everywhere who are coming for Trump. I mean, record numbers of people.
Yeah.
I don't believe the polls. The polls are used to manipulate people.
Okay, but okay, so I'm learning a lot about politics on this show, so this is what I know. Right now, we're talking about what if there is a brokered convention, right? And what would the alternative candidate be? Because in the pool, Paul Ryan and other people are being talked about.
Right.
Do you really think that Trump is correct in saying that people will, you know, be up in arms, quote unquote, riot, he said that, if they did not choose him as the nominee?
I don't think that there would be a physical riot, but I think it would absolutely destroy the Republican Party. There is no way that people who are coming in droves now to support Trump enthusiastically are just going to say, oh, well, whoever you pick is going to be fine.
Is that responsible of him to say, you know, they'll be rioting? I mean, sort of throw gasoline on the fire like that? Is that responsible?
That's really not the point. I mean, we can look.
Well, what's the point?
Well, no, we can look at all these things that politicians and people in the political sphere say.
Yeah.
Or we can say, what are the true issues? It's sort of like what's going on with some of these rallies, where, you know, we've seen some violence.
All of his antics are covering over the true issues. That's the problem. His antics are covering over the true issues.
Right, the true issue is the First Amendment of America and the freedom of speech. And we need to be looking at those kinds of issues. Everybody needs to be looking at those issues, not just one side or the other side. And the fact of the matter is, when you look at these rallies that are going on, do you ever see that happening in a Clinton or Bernie Sanders rally?
They're not promoting that. They're not
No, you don't.
Why not?
Why not?
Because people on the right don't do that. People on the left do that.
And people on the left don't say, you know, go punch him if you want to, or I take him out on a stretcher. I haven't heard that on the left.
Yeah, but you're missing my point.
What's your point?
What is the point?
What is it?
You're missing the point. The point is that we have to focus on the things that are essential to America, like First Amendment rights, not personalities. That's the problem. We always want to focus on personalities.
But you've met with Donald Trump behind closed doors. Have you seen any evidence that he's really not the bombastic, sort of baiting personality?
You said there were the two.
Are there two Donald Trumps?
There are.
Well, which one is running for president? Which one?
Who have you seen? Tell us who you have seen.
Well, I have seen a man who's actually willing to sit down and engage in deep, serious conversations about the problems that affect our country.
Well, why is he holding out on America?
I have seen a man who actually recognizes that he doesn't know everything.
Yeah. And he doesn't think that's going to work in his election if he shows that side of him? Or is that more of like a male thing I have to show? Yeah, is that more of a male thing?
I think you're going to see more of that side of him coming up.
So he might be, so in fact,
did you notice in the last...
He might be fooling his own constituency.
Did you notice in the last debate that he wasn't nearly as bombastic?
Yes.
Did you notice that?
I did.
He's transitioning now into general election.
But sir, you know,
I think you're going to continue to see that.
I'm sorry.
But again, there's no perfect person.
No, there isn't a perfect person, but if you're running for president of the United States of America, a country which has said to other countries, bring me the folks that you need who need freedom. We're here for you. When you talk about Mexicans being rapists and murderers, when you talk to women, if he had spoken to your wife the way he's spoken to some of these women, would you take that, sir?
Let me tell you something. When you're very nice, you're very respectful, you talk about the real issues and not get into all these issues, where does it get you? It gets you where it got me. Nowhere, okay?
So is that what this is about?
No,
it can't be about that.
No, but here's my point. My point is, he and some of the other politicians, they do what people want. They say what people want to hear. They appeal to people.
That's how Hitler got in, sir. That's how Hitler got in.
Yeah,
but you were a voice. You were, okay.
And it's an important voice, and it needs to be out there. But what we have to do is recognize that we have to work with what we have, not necessarily with what we ideally would want. And we, the people, are largely responsible. We have to be willing to stand up for what we believe, the people of the United States, because the politicians will respond to that.
This is true. So, folks, get out and vote for who you think is going to run the country, whoever it is. Thank you for coming back, Dr. Ben Carson. We will be right back.